on a separate partition. Alright, first thing we're going to do with our empty space right here is create a new partition. Now, we're going to create a swap partition first. What is swap? Well, swap is this. First, select file system type, select the drop down, and go to swap. Alright, now check this out. However much memory your computer has, is you want to give it about half that amount for swap space. More than half. You can give it anywhere from half to the same amount of computer memory you have. Do not give it less than half, because it's kind of pointless to have a small amount of swap space. And do not give it greater than the amount of system memory you have, because you'll have what's called thrashing. Now, what swap does is when your computer loads so much into memory and memory starts to get full, or some of the things that it has in memory, it knows it's not going to be needing for a few moments or a little while, and CPU time, that's a long while, then it might store it to disk, an area on the hard drive designated to acting as virtual memory. It's like fake system memory, and it's made to hold things that memory is too full to hold, or memory is not using at the moment. It's in order to it's an attempt or a method to speed up your system slightly to make up for memory that you may lack. Even if you don't lack it, you still don't need all the things in memory all the time that you have in memory sometimes. Anyway, the reason why you don't want less than half the amount of physical memory you have, we're going to use the example that you have a 1 gigabyte stick of memory installed in your system. If you have a 1 gigabyte stick of memory, then give it about 500 megabytes, 600. I'd give it 600 megabytes of swap space. Any smaller than that, you're wasting a partition table. I mean, you can't do shit with less than that. So give it about 600 megabytes of swap space. Now, you can give it up to a gigabyte. Actually, you can give it as much as you want. You can give it 400,000 gigabytes if you want. But the reason why you do not give it more than the physical amount of memory you have is because if you do wind up using more than the amount of memory you have in swap space, then you are engaged in a situation called thrashing. And thrashing is when the computer spends more time swapping things in and out of memory because there's not enough memory than it does actually doing computational work on the data it's swapping. That's called thrashing. So if you have a problem where your system does not have enough memory to begin with, swapping it out's not going to make it any faster. It's going to waste time. That's why you only use the same amount of swap space as you have memory. I've seen several articles recommend that you use twice the amount, but I don't recommend using more than once the amount. I just don't, period. So that's my position on that. You can make your own judgment, but that's my position. I'm going to give this 600 megabytes because I've got about a gigabyte of fake memory on my virtual machine. Fixed size because I want it to be exactly 600 megabytes, so leave this option for fixed size. Check this box for forced to be primary partition. Leave the encrypt box unchecked. You are only, by convention, able to have up to 4 primary partitions on a hard drive because, well, that's just the way they do hard drives. You can actually have more primary partitions, but they have to be extended partitions or logical partitions. There are limitations to operations you can do on extended and logical partitions, such as resizing, moving data, things like that, without reinstalling your operating system. I don't like working with anything but primary partitions, and you can only have 4 of them. So we have a swap partition, a Windows partition, a data storage partition, and a Linux partition, which we are about to create via clicking on the last of the empty space and clicking New. When you create a Linux partition for a Linux installation, you have the option to specify a mount point. It's not an option, it's mandatory. You have to have at least one partition with a root mount point. A root mount point is means the root of the file system, the base or beginning or root of the entire operating system's file system. If you're coming from Windows and you have absolutely no fucking clue what I'm talking about, it can sound a little confusing. Windows makes these cute little icons and arbitrarily just concocts this stupid ass file system naming scheme and calls it drive D, drive C, drive B, and that misleads people into thinking of a file system as as a device, and it's not. It's a system of organization that starts somewhere. You have to start somewhere, and that's the root of the file system. All devices are mounted somewhere in the root file system, or they are the root file system, and you'll learn more about that as you keep watching videos. But you have to have a root. Have to have a base, an origin file system. Anyway, later, when you get more experienced, you might optionally create a separate partition for your home directory, which is where users' data is kept. But if you keep a data storage partition, like I am hell-bent on teaching people to do, you don't need to back up your user home directories. And most likely, you probably are the only user on your system anyway. So it's just completely unnecessary. The reason why that's a common option and it's kind of popular is because the users' home directories is where their configuration options are stored for each user. And so if you go in and install the latest version of your operating system, for example, the next version of Fedora comes out and you install it, well, all the users have to go through and set up all their stuff again, let's customize it. So if you back up their home directories, all the hidden configuration files for each user, and just drop it in the new installation, then you're good to go. But like I said, we're going to assume you back everything up on your data storage partition, and we're going to run with that concept. And on top of that, you can't create a home partition right now because you have a Windows partition, which is the 4th partition. So you can't create another partition. So check the box right here to be forced to be primary partition. Leave encrypt unchecked. Check this box for forced to fill to maximum allowable size, which means take up the whole partition we selected. File system type, make sure it says extension 3. Now, actually, correction, make sure it says extension 4, because by the time you watch this video, the next version of Fedora should probably be close to coming out. And if you download and install it, it'll probably have support for the brand new extension 4 file system. This is Fedora 10, it does not, so use extension 3. Extension 4 is not only the successor to extension 3, but it is way better than any file system out there. It's actually the best file system because of things it can do. Like, for example, extension 3 is only slightly better. It's got like a couple of features extension 2 doesn't have. Otherwise, they're identical. And usually I'd use extension 2 if I'm using a small hard drive and file system space is critical, like you don't have much of it, then use extension 2, because you don't really need extension 3. It's just got a couple extra little features that most normal people don't need. But extension 4 is a completely different concept. You'll always want to use that if that's an option, because it allows for a lot of things that you cannot do with any other extension file systems. Alright, so click OK. And I know that's kind of a long lecture about partitioning and shit like that. How the hell do we get 7 megabytes of free space? Alright, check it out. I'm going to try to enlarge this swap partition real quick to take up the rest of that free space. See if that works. Well, that's not what I wanted at all, you fucking fag. Alright, let's try this again.